Hey there, welcome to this episode of the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. My name is Todd Rhodes. I'm one of the co-founders over at chemistrystaffing.com, and I am so glad you are here today for the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. Today, we're confronting a heartbreaking reality that exists even within the walls of our churches, and that's domestic and sexual abuse. Now, it's a topic, especially for a Monday, if you're listening to this on a Monday, it's a difficult process to talk about. Actually, it's a difficult topic any day of the week, but it's really one that we can't afford to miss. And as church leaders, we not only have a moral obligation, but also a spiritual obligation to protect those that are vulnerable and to seek justice for those that are being victimized or oppressed. And it's really important that we create a culture of safety and healing inside of our churches and within our congregations. Abuse can take many different forms. It can be physical, obviously. It can be emotional, sexual. It can be spiritual abuse. We read stories about that all the time in the news, more times than I'd like to know. It could be financial abuse. It can happen to anyone, regardless of your age or your gender or your race or how you're doing socioeconomically. And often it thrives in silence. It's hidden behind closed doors and masked by shame and fear. But as church leaders, we really do have a unique opportunity, almost an obligation. It is an obligation to break the silence and shine light on the darkness and offer hope and healing to those who are suffering. So how can we do this? Here are a few ways that I think at least we can at least move the ball down the field a little bit. And the first is just, this might seem obvious, but just some education and awareness. If you have a staff, equip your volunteers, your leadership to recognize signs of abuse. Provide, and maybe you've not had this training yourself. I would urge you to go and get some. Have a specialist come in and talk to you and talk to your staff. Provide some training on how to respond both compassionately and appropriately to some of these type of items when they come up. And then create some safe spaces. Foster a culture where victims feel safe to come forward and to share their stories without fear of judgment and reprisal. Some churches just are places filled with grace and openness and honesty, where this is the culture where victims do feel safe. Other churches, man, it's the lack of a graceful culture where people would feel very threatened and very uncomfortable coming forward with any kind of abuse or anything like that. Educate yourself, create some safe spaces. Also, it's really important to establish some clear policies and procedures, specifically for reporting and responding to these allegations. If you think that any kind of allegations will never happen in your church, you probably have your head in the sand. So be prepared. Establish some clear policies, procedures for when they happen, if they happen, and ensure that these policies are on paper and that they're communicated to everyone. When you can, you need to partner with some professionals. Sometimes these kind of issues are complex, and sometimes we don't have the expertise. They're above our pay grade. So if you can collaborate with local organizations that specialize in domestic violence, sexual abuse, they can provide some resources, some of that education and training that we were talking about a little bit earlier, and they can also offer some support or come alongside you as you offer support. And then a couple other things. Hold the perpetrators accountable. You cannot excuse, you cannot enable abusive behavior. You need to take the allegations seriously. How many news stories have we seen where churches did not take accusations as credible, or at least look at them seriously, did not conduct thorough investigations, did not report to law enforcement? Man, this is vitally important. You need to hold the perpetrators accountable. You need to take the accusations seriously. You need to conduct those thorough investigations. And this is hard when it's one of your own, but you need to involve law enforcement when there's mandatory reporting that needs to happen. And then finally, offer some support and healing and training provide some ongoing support and resources for victims. And can I say this, just as a side note, in a lot of the stories of abuse that go public in churches, much of what I see, honestly, is butt covering. We need to cover our own butts. We're not legally responsible. Sometimes there's even swift action. If it's a staff member that some abuse was uncovered, there's maybe some swift action to terminate the employee. But I would say in a lot of the cases that I read, there appears to be a lot more support for the perpetrator than what there is for the victim. You need to remember the victim is the victim, and they need ongoing support. They need resources for healing, and that may include counseling and paying for counseling, providing spiritual guidance. And if your church or you are not the person to do this, find help for the victims. The bottom line is really this: uncovering, addressing abuse in the church. Man, it's difficult, but it's necessary. And if you can create a culture of awareness and safety and accountability and break the silence and offer hope to the hurting, that will really make a huge difference. It's really about, and hear me here, leaders, this is really an issue not just about protecting the vulnerable. It's all about that. But it's also about upholding the integrity of the gospel. Jesus came to set captives free and to heal the brokenhearted and to bring justice to the oppressed. And as his followers and as church leaders especially, we're called to do the same. Okay, heavy topic, I know, for today, but it's vitally important. You don't want to see your church in the headlines, number one. And number two, you just want to care for people in your church that may be on the receiving end of some type of abuse. It could be from a staff member. It could just be that they're dealing with it in their lives, and they need you as their spiritual leaders to come alongside and assist them and help them however you can. If there's any way that I can help, any kind of resource that I can send your way, I am happy to do that. Love to resource the churches. You reach out to me anytime. podcast@chemistrystaffing.com. I know this is a heavy topic, but it's one that we really need to talk about. So I hope that this has been helpful to you today. I hope you'll join us again also tomorrow, right here on the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. We're here every day, Monday through Friday. And you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great day.